You know, that wasn't an All-Ireland winning performance.
Probably should have won the game based on their second half performance.
Is it a step too far to say it was the performance so far of the World Cup? Maybe not.
OTB AM's performance rankings with Gillette.
I'm scratching my head. That performances was just lacked that intensity.
Have you done this before? Do you know what you're doing? Are you okay on your own here?
Yeah, let's go. Let's do it.
So basically, we have a traffic light system, Shane.
Okay, talk us through it for the viewers that don't know either.
Red is bad.
Okay.
Amber is like meh, and green is go.
Okay, so we get to the good stuff at the very end, the positive stuff at the end. So we start off with a real negative start to the Monday morning. The red, the really maroony red, is FIFA and Qatar, Ger. I guess we could say the fans and what happened yesterday in the first game. Like, I was watching the opening ceremony with Morgan Freeman, and I was thinking, this is bizarre. And then you see the empty seats emerge in the second half, and you're thinking, oh, they're just picking up their little feeds and their non-alcoholic drinks at half time and enjoying themselves and having a chat. But those people never took their seats. So by the end of the game, there's thousands upon thousands of empty seats. And I know a lot of journalists, Gavin Cooney was in the stadium as well, and they were kind of saying it was just a bit of a bizarre atmosphere. You saw the Qatari fans behind the goal, who apparently have been there from well before kickoff. And bear in mind, this is a stadium 40 kilometres outside of Doha. I'm fairly sure, middle of the desert, traffic situation wouldn't be the best. But it was just a bizarre one. And then you're seeing the likes of Erdogan up in the comfy seats with the FIFA top brass and the Saudis and the other Gulf leaders, and it all just felt a little bit strange. Like, if you're watching on TV, you saw the Gary Lineker kind of kicked it all off with a fairly reasonable speech that he would have prepared for quite some time, and spoke out fairly vehemently against the Qataris, which was powerful. And then you see Gary Neville over on BN Sports, the Qatari channel, with Richard Keys and Andy Gray, and probably less so. I think he was a little bit more toned down on Qatari television than he perhaps was at home. But I don't know how you felt, Ger, but the whole thing for me had to be in the red this morning in terms of the whole first day experience. Like, we're not even talking about the match, and for good reason.
Yeah. I mean, the match in some way redeemed a little bit the sport itself, in that, like, you know, I definitely, when the first offside decision was made, you're like, oh, it looks like the fix is in here.
Yeah.
I still don't really understand the offside decision, even after they show us on VAR. No. It's like, well, when was that ball played? And is that who? So
yeah, and when was he offside? Like
what point in the whole scoring of the goal is this? It's obviously, like, it's when the ball is played to him.
Yeah, but
it was anyway. It did look like, oh, this is not going to be great. And then they award the penalty, which I think is an important moment in football history, where it's okay, the fix is not in. That's good.
Yeah.
And from that point forward, at least, Enner Valencia wins the game, and you can't just buy the tournament any more than they've already bought the tournament. And you have to say that it's backfiring pretty rapidly, right? Like, an empty stadium, people constantly talking about the migrant workers and human rights issues. Like, is Qatar, will their reputation be enhanced by having this? And maybe the sports washing isn't working for a change.
No.
Maybe the sports washing is actually having the Barbara Streisand effect.
Yeah, usually it does work. We've spoken on the show many times about how sports washing has worked, and all of a sudden we're talking about Newcastle United's performances on the pitch and forgetting about the Saudis. But on this occasion, you're seeing the empty seats and you're thinking, like Mark Ogden made the point on Twitter yesterday, football journalist in the UK, he was talking about the fact that he's seeing Argentinian fans walking around in Qatar and how passionate they are, and he saw the same in Russia. They were probably the country with the most fans in Russia, I think he made that point. And, like, you know, nowadays we should be giving a World Cup to countries with the most passionate fans. And yes, we're giving a World Cup to a country with absolutely no football culture. I'm not saying that the Middle East shouldn't get a World Cup. Of course they should.
Yeah, like, it's possible to have all of these competing notions in your head at the same time. I do think that a Winter World Cup is not the massive aberration that the Anglo-centric world thinks it is. Like, it's a Winter World Cup for everybody in the Southern Hemisphere every time. You know, like, but it doesn't work with our football season. Like, well, your football season is not the only football season in the world. Yeah, sure, the Premier League is the biggest and richest, but, like, if the biggest and the richest always gets whatever they want, that's not really the whole point of this. So I do think that, like, so I saw the clip of Gary Neville saying that a Muslim country and a Middle Eastern country should be getting the World Cup. I actually would agree with that. Yeah. It isn't the World Cup of democracy either. It isn't the World Cup of Commonwealth of like-minded states. It is supposed to be genuinely a World Cup, and, like, at some point, at some point, all of those conversations about everybody's foreign policy can lead you to go, well, okay, we can't have any dealings with this country. But so notwithstanding all that, Qatar shouldn't have had it. Like, that's very clear, right?
Well, yeah.
And it's becoming increasingly clear that they're not really ready for it, and that it's going to be a bit of a shit show. And so hopefully this whole thing has backfired. Like, but having said that, Gianni Infantino has been reappointed unopposed for a third term, so nothing's going to change.
Today I feel, he's just the most bizarre speech ever that you'll ever see in advance of a World Cup. Like, you start to wonder, does Gianni Infantino have people around him that are telling him not to speak, or does he have too much power that maybe they're afraid to stop him from saying certain things? But if anyone had looked over that speech in advance, I mean, surely you would have said, hold
well, it
on
was ripped
here.
off from Andrew Cuomo, the New York politician from 2017. So I'd say they thought it was great. Like, oh yeah, I'll have a little bit of that. And it's, I mean, in the right hands, the speech could have been very powerful. Like, if somebody wasn't a complete hypocrite uttering the words. But I think we should move on from this, because I'm already like...
Yeah, vexed and tired of it.
Yeah, so that's red. The first red, FIFA and Qatar.
Second red, slightly less red. Rugby head injuries, still a very serious issue. And I mean, the conversation has flared up out of Ireland's 13-10 win over Australia on Saturday night at the Aviva. And Nick White, and for anyone who watched the match, you'll have seen that the worrying images of him being very unsteady on his feet. Per balance, I don't know what he was like in terms of his coordination, and that was a point made on television afterwards. And this whole issue of what did he have a dazed, blank, vacant look? I mean, you can make your own mind up. Interesting discussion on Virgin Media with Joe and Matt Williams and Rob Kearney afterwards. Matt very much making the point that you have to trust the medical professionals on this situation, and Rob Kearney kind of saying, you have to err on the side of caution when it comes to concussion. And he's someone, they're both in fact people who've experienced concussion at some point in their own careers. And they reference the Jeremy Loughman situation as well, and we know that concussion symptoms sometimes don't show up for 24, 48 hours, which is a very fair point to make. And with Nick White, you don't have to be a doctor to look at those images and say, well, that's concerning. If he doesn't have concussion, he's unsteady on his feet for some other reason, and regardless, he needs to be taken off the pitch for his own sake. So yeah, listen to medical people, yes, but it is rugby's biggest issue, and the lads made that point in television. It was very concerning. I don't know what you've made of it, Ger.
I think the fundamental issue here is that the HIA is not suitable, and so by their own laws, there shouldn't have been a HIA. But the fact that there was a HIA, even after the referee says I saw him stumble, means that the system isn't working. And we're going to talk about this with Alan Quinn a little bit later on. He sent me a link last night to an NPR story that came out in the aftermath of Tua Tagovailoa. He's the Miami Dolphins QB. He was concussed 1 week, and then the next week he went back out and played, having been essentially cleared to play through their version of the protocols, which, the HIA is a part of rugby's protocols. And then the next week got a horrific injury and was sparked clean out. Now has since come back and made a full recovery, so you hope that there are no lingering issues from it. But what happened in the aftermath of that was that the NFL decided that they were going to change the rules, because the rules here clearly aren't working. So whatever the disputes about the symptoms, like, once somebody stumbles, they're supposed to be taken out for their own good. It's possible that the stumbling was missed by the independent medical people. You would hope that they're listening to the ref mic and that they can hear that, and that there's not just one of them. In a situation like this, it's possible that there are going to be multiple concussions at the same time, so you would hope that there are more than one, and so somebody else is like, you keep watching there to see if there's any other bits of data or information or evidence that will help us to make our decision. Because even at that stage, like, why are they going through the HIA? So Nick White says, I was pulled off by the physio to do a HIA. That's the first problem. I felt fine. I passed my HIA, went back on. He's subsequently been stood down for 12 days, right? Because there's like a series of criteria that if you meet any of these, you get automatically stood down for 12 days, which is now the amount of time that they're doing. Remember, it used to be shorter than that. Like, in years to come, we'll look back on that period where you could get concussed on a Saturday and be out of the protocol in time for the following Saturday and go, really? That doesn't seem like a very good thing anymore. So now it's gone out to 12 days, and he's saying that, like, I feel good. I passed my HIA. It's good to go. Like, I'm 78 kg running up against these blokes. Mate, I feel fine now. You guys can attest to that. The process. I did the HIA and passed it. I'm good. How often do I run out of the corner, out of a line out and get bashed by 3 blokes? I was just a little ginger. I'm fine, mate. So, I think the fundamental issue here is that the game doesn't quite yet know how to deal with this properly, even though it's being sued on multiple fronts, and even though it's the major concern that any parents have, that any players have, that any ex-players have about the long-term damage that brain injuries are going to cause. And this keeps happening. Like, it just keeps happening. The same thing keeps happening again and again and again. And rugby's doing its best to try and get on top of it, but whatever they're doing at the moment is clearly failing. And so therefore, you have to say, go back and change your rules. Like, an organisation as self-protective as the NFL, and that uses up the lives of its protagonists in a brutal way, even they changed the rules. Even they were like, well, maybe we need to revisit this. And like, in large part, it was driven by the Players Association. So I actually don't think that the rugby players associations around the world have been anywhere near as strong as they should be. They're all very close to their respective rugby unions. And what are they doing about this? Like, where are they saying, okay, we're going to go on strike, or everybody's going to wear their socks down next week, or everybody's not going to take part in sponsor activities around the next internationals or something? Like, what are they doing to say, fix this, World Rugby? Because, you know, where's the impetus for change coming? So that was it. I think it is a very complicated issue. I hope Nick White has no long-term damage. I understand the pressure that the independent medical person is under. It's like split-second stuff, and if they were focused on the first bit as opposed to the second bit, and so therefore they're like, well, he banged his head, but he got up okay, and he's fine here, he's in the room now, and he's passed all his tests. Like, if nobody had told the independent medical person that there had been stumbling, then what are they supposed to do? Because they can't magic it into existence, you know? If you don't know what you don't know, that's...
Yeah, and it was quite obvious to everyone in the stadium who saw the 2 incidents on the big screen that you know, he was unsteady on his feet, that's for sure, and the independent doctor needs to be made aware of that. You know, if they're not aware of it, then they need to be made aware of any video evidence that kind of backs up potential concussion. And like, it's okay Nick White saying that, you know, I feel fine, mate, but the reality is it's not down to the players. So, you know, a player can't decide while they're concussed whether or not they should be able to play on, and even 24, 48 hours later, they might still be feeling the effects of concussion and not knowing it. So, yeah, we do need to listen to medical people, but yeah, as Rob Connie said, it's the single biggest issue facing rugby at the moment, and there's still a long way to go, as we've seen from recent studies.
Right, what's next?
Republic of Ireland into the amber, I guess, Irish football. So we had the 2-1 defeat to Norway, of course, disappointing, and a poor performance as well. And then Malta last night. Right, let's look at the positives for a second, because we rarely do that. Jamie McGrath was good. Callum O'Dowda has come out of these couple of games with his head up. Mark Sykes from the Ormo Road in Belfast, first Belfast-born player to line out for the Republic since the 1940s. Really? Yeah, apparently so. So really good to see him get his first appearance. Evan Ferguson, more football as well for the first team. A win and a clean sheet, I guess, is a positive from last night. And people like Nathan Collins, of course, staying firm and keeping those clean sheets. Caoimhín Kelleher to get his appearance as well. That's a stretch. Now, the reality of it and the negatives on this is that it's Malta. Now, we should probably be beating a team like Malta by 3 or 4 goals.
I don't think there's anybody in world football we should be beaten by 3 or 4 goals.
Possibly not.
There isn't. Like, I think that time has passed. We're like, we're really at bottom of the second tier, top of the third tier in European football, and like, all of those teams can put in a defensive performance and at least draw against us. Like, we don't have those rights anymore. We don't.
But if you look at the level of players we have in the team, we have a few Premier League players and then a majority of Championship and a few League One. Like, Malta aren't anywhere close to the level of the players in the Republic of Ireland squad. And we even talk about how the Irish squad is nowhere near what it was in the 90s, which is fair.
Yeah, and we actually have struggled against Malta, even when we had those brilliant teams.
Yeah, and that's maybe international football and players not being used to playing with each other. But I mean, like last night, you look at the first touch of some of the players, the look of concern some of them had when they were on the ball. Like,
well, that's not good.
No, it's worrying. And you're heading into March now against France and the Netherlands, and you're thinking, Well, Jesus, like, how are we supposed to, like, the only positive you can take from the last week as well is that Malta drew, I think, 2-2 with Greece. So, I mean, Greece are going to be in our group as well, and I'd be concerned about Greece. They're probably the worst out of that pool of teams we could have been drawn with. I really don't know what the positives are. The whole Stephen Kenny conversation is going to keep going. Of course it is. It's not going to stop. But then people turn around and say it's a results business as well. And he got the win last night, I guess.
It was only friendly. So I think you're right to focus on the performance after a game like that, and I'm sure they will too. I think some of the tabs in the morning. Here's to few. Mr. Robinson is the back of the Mirror.
Very good.
And they also have Kenny's Rob of the Green, which isn't great. That's Callum Robinson. There was another one. So what's this word? Can you see the screen? What's this bottom word here? This word
Malta
here.
barley.
Yeah. Come on.
Malta barley. Malt barley.
Exactly.
Right.
But like barely barley. Come on.
That's a stretch, is it?
Come on, folks in the Star. You can do better than that.
They tried. At least they tried.
No, this is better. Multi Towers.
That's okay.
No, that's the inside one.
Yeah, I like that one. They could have gone with that on the back page.
A and B.
The most pointless game of all time. When it comes straight after the opening World Cup game, albeit a fairly dour World Cup opening game in terms of the two teams involved. Like a 7 o'clock kickoff in an international friendly that means absolutely nothing. It's tough to get excited for it. 700 Irish fans over there as well, making a lot of noise.
Well, I'd say the weather's slightly better than it is here this morning.
Yeah.
Will says, haha, I agree with Ger about our current level, but I don't remember it being so realistic under McCarthy last tenure. Well, Mick McCarthy wasn't picking the right team. He couldn't get Matt Doherty in the side, and our performance against Gibraltar was much worse than it was against Malta last night. And I'd seen Mick McCarthy manage really good players before and not do a great job with it. So, there you go. Ger, the question you need to ask after 2 years is Kenny making progress? The answer is no, says Il Postino 88. I've been defending him since the beginning. Now it's just not happening. The subs were ridiculous. Hendrick has played through all the qualifiers and Nations League. Why not give Smallbone those minutes? Did think that there was an opportunity there to give Smallbone, but I guess they couldn't risk another collapse the way we have seen the team have a recent collapse at the Aviva in a game that was like won and dusted. Dahlia Shocknick says more skill and genuine commitment in the Ballygunner versus the Pearship game than this entire World Cup sham. Tying everything nicely together. Will says worryingly it looks as if the players' enthusiasm for playing for him, Stephen Kenny, has waned. I don't know, how do you tell that from like an end of season friendly? I mean, it's obviously not the end of season, but it's the end of that competition is now over and there's a new competition starting and we'll have the world's best players coming in short, quick, rapid fire to the Aviva. I think they're going to get up for that, and I'm hopeful that something happens, but I don't expect something to happen at this stage. But we've got a tough group.
Should the motivation not be there to line out for your country, even if it isn't a friendly? It's an international friendly, but
when you say the motivation, what do you mean?
It's a cap. It's a cap for your country.
Sensational. You're going to put the best performance of all time in, or you're like, this doesn't actually mean anything. I've got to get up for it slightly differently. I'm trying to win my place here. I'm trying to impress.
All of the above. You're trying to win your place. You're trying to impress Stephen Kenny. You're playing for your country. Albeit
you thought we should have won that game 3-0 last night, all singing, all dancing, the way we always do in away matches in international.
No, but like with the players on our team and the players on the Malta team, I mean, we should be winning those games. And look, I understand the conservatism, and one of the listeners has made that point that he's quite conservative with the substitutions. Stephen Kenny was making that point in the press conferences in the last 2 weeks all along, because he said it's a results business and he needs to start picking up wins, albeit in friendlies. It doesn't matter. So I understand that. We just struggle against the low block. Malta had a low block. We struggle against weaker teams for some reason. I just don't understand why. Like, on paper, my point is that they should have been winning a game against the likes of Malta 2 or 3-0. Like we didn't. We only won because of Maltese capitulation.
That we could play at the moment and you go, oh, we're definitely going to beat these 3-0 like in international football. I think those days are gone. That's the first thing. Look, I think it's a big campaign coming up next, and the team needs to perform much better than it's performing at the moment.
Should we not beat Gibraltar by 3 or 4-0?
I think if we're like, I mean,
we should. We mightn't though.
Well, so what does history teach you? That we should do these things that we don't actually ever do anymore. Then
that we lose to the Faroes.
Well, then our expectation isn't that good, or it should be. I don't. This doesn't. These literal international friendlies barely exist anymore.
Yeah.
And so I think they're kind of useless as reference points in the long term and medium term. What we've seen from Stephen Kennedy's side is they can put in really good performances against very good teams. They have struggled consistently against sides which defend against us in any meaningful way. And I mean, I was flicking, I'm not going to lie, I was flicking back and forth from this game last night to the NFL going, I mean, maybe I'll just watch some of the Red Zone.
I was doing the same with the snooker. I have to
a little bit of Red Zone in my life. Why should I be punished? What do we do to deserve this Malta game?
Yeah, it was tough.
So I think we should be sticking a pin in the Ireland stuff until
the March.
Yeah, and then it's do or die. And that's it. Like, judge me on this. Yeah, okay, well, actually, and you made a rod for your own back by talking about winning the Nations League group. But it's good to have ambition. And it'd be very ambitious for us to think about qualifying from the draw that we've got. But, like, that's the game. And let's see what happens. We're going to talk about this in more detail with David Sneyd. So if you've got proper football opinions you want us to get to, we will get to it. We've one of the best young centre-backs in Europe. Play 4-3-3, says Neil Martin. I mean, okay, we definitely have a very highly rated centre-back, but his form is not good at the moment. Like, not good against Norway. Not good last night, was it?
No.
I mean, again, I didn't see the full 96, 97 minutes.
Like, McLean wasn't good last night. Matt Doherty, I'd almost suggest that, like, could you play Matt Doherty for Ireland at left wing back and have him tucking in on his stronger foot?
I definitely think that's
an option.
Yeah, I think that he did it. He did it well the one night that it happened. And, so his form's not great at the moment. But I don't know. I definitely would love to see a bit more from our better players.
The experienced heads, and McLean and Doherty are two of those. And even you're seeing the likes of Hendrick coming on and not doing much. But look, it's a friendly, and I take your point. It's hard for them players to get motivated. I think you should be motivated playing for your country, but when you're looking at everyone else heading off to the World Cup and March is the next competitive fixtures, I understand.
Chris Cal says, in before the anti-Kenny, the only time to start judging Kenny is from March, not before. And Jared Lynch of the World Cup says, it felt very strange, the whole run-up to it and everything about it. Not the same. FIFA World Cup should be in the summer. I mean, as I said, it's summer in our part of the world in summertime, but it's actually winter in half of the world. Literally half of the world, it's winter. So, our summer is the only one that matters. It's a fair point.
We do forget that sometimes.
Onto the green.
Yeah, onto the green. So into the slightly yellowy green, but Irish rugby. I think that's where it belongs because it's been a strange one. Because we've won 3 from 3, so we should be buzzing, shouldn't we? But realistically, I don't know how we all feel. Like Brent Pope made the point after the match with Steve-O on Saturday night against Australia. Like, it's like boxing against rugby. You kind of sometimes struggle, but if you can get over the line and get the wins, and a number of years ago we'd have taken any sort of win against the likes of Australia. To have beaten Australia, to have beaten South Africa, to have beaten New Zealand, to be the world #1 team in the world, heading to the Six Nations. I mean, in that perspective, it is in the green. We're record equaling 12th consecutive home win for Ireland. That's positive. A November clean sweep. Some really good performances. Ross Byrne with cojones of steel.
Yeah. I mean, Josh van der Flier is the real reason this is in the definitely.
Yeah, well,
in the
that's
green.
huge.
So World Player of the Year is van der Flier, which does not happen very often. Keith Wood at the very start, Johnny Sexton once, and now van der Flier. That is. We'll talk more with Quinny about this. The team has been named there. Sexton was in at 10. So I could just make it out for you. Ellis Genge, Malcolm Marks, Tyke Furlong, Tyke Burns, 2 Tykes. Sam Whitelock makes it. Pablo Matera of Argentina. Josh van der Flier, Gregory Aldred at 8. The French were very upset that he didn't get shortlisted. Dupont at 9. Sexton at 10. Marika Korobetti from Australia, if I got the pronunciation right. Damien de Ellende from South Africa, Kanya Am, Will Jordan, and Stewart at fullback for England. So is that the most we've ever had?
Yeah, that's pretty. I mean, that's not bad. You take 4 in the World Player Team of the Year. Like, I saw a lot of people, and this is the same with the PFA Team of the Year or with the All Stars. You're always looking at who's been left out, and Eben Etzebeth for South Africa has been left out. Sevilla for the All Blacks left out. So probably a couple of players that could have been put in, but we're not complaining with our 4. And really, really nice to hear Josh van der Flier talking afterwards about the fact that, when he was a kid, he used to keep track of all the World Rugby Players of the Year and the top 3 and kind of learn them off by heart. And here he is, the 3rd Irishman to win that award after Keith Wood, as you say, and Jonathan Sexton. I mean, this is unbelievable. I don't know to be expected. He had an unbelievable year, Gunnar Fleer, but I hadn't heard any word that he was prime position for this award.
I think it had been the chatter since the All Blacks. Really, it's like, oh, he's in the running here. He's been showing up in all the big games, and of course, it's actually only the internationals that count for this.
Fair, yeah.
So after the Six Nations, he'd been one of our best players in that. But Dupont had actually been player of the tournament, and it's pretty harsh on Dupont's the best player in the world. But fair play, Van der Fleer, totally deserved. Big win for Irish rugby. They're in the green. What's next?
Yeah, we'll take them. And next in the green, a very, very good weekend for Irish golf. So no winners, which seems strange. But we'll start with Leona Maguire. So she was at the CME Group Tour Championship in Florida. She ended up finishing runner-up to Lydia Ko. It was a $2 million prize for the winner. But not a bad weekend for Leona because she collects $550,000 for her second place finish. Sensational 9 under 63 on Saturday. She had started the third round, I think it was seven shots behind Lydia Ko, and a really unbelievable performance on Saturday brought her right back in contention. She drew level with Lydia Ko after the third round, and she had said afterwards if you'd offered her second at the start of the week, she would have taken your hand off. Really tricky conditions as well yesterday in the final round. So to finish second and to pick up over $500,000 for her weekend's work, not bad at all for Leona Maguire. Seamus Power as well. Huge step again towards Ryder Cup selection, and every week he's kind of proven week on week that he really should be in this Ryder Cup team. So came up just short in his bid to win for the second time in 3 starts, but he tied for 5th in the RSM Classic. This was at Sea Island. So went into the final round tied for 13th, so kind of opposite to Maguire. He was 3 shots behind the leaders, but a really, really good final round, 466. The winner was Adam Svensson, the Canadian. He carded 664 to win. But Power still wins $277,000 and will be top of the FedEx Cup standings when this tour arrives in Kapalua in January. That'll be his next big one, the Century Tournament of Champions. So I mean, 1st, 3rd and 5th in his last 3 starts, Seamus Power, and look, more Ryder Cup qualifying points. So that's the big one. And he even spoke afterwards about being disappointed with his performance in some regards. So he should be a shoe-in for this Ryder Cup team, and it will be great to see him. And then Rory McIlroy. So finishing the year as European #1 for the 4th time in his career. First time though since 2015. John Ram was the winner, and John Ram was unbelievable at the weekend. He won the DP World Tour Championship in Dubai by 2 shots over Tyrrell Hatton and Alex Noren. McIlroy was back in 4th, finishes top of these DP World Rankings. So Matt Fitzpatrick blew up around the turn. So Matt Fitzpatrick, of course, the US Open back in June. He needed to win, and for McIlroy to not finish runner-up or to finish second, and McIlroy to be outside the top 7. But he capitulated a little bit on the back 9, Matt Fitzpatrick, to allow Rory McIlroy to finish #1 for the 4th time in his career. He was very consistent. And look, I guess the next question for Rory is, when can he break this 8-year major drought? But the way he's playing, Ger, I mean, you have to feel like it's right around the corner. Now, there's no guarantees in a major. You're never guaranteed to win a major, but the way Rory is playing, surely it's in the next year.
Well, yeah, you kind of feel like it's
Which would?
It's bubbling up, and definitely his best chance is coming in the next 6 months. So, right, they are this week's Gillette Labs Performance Rankings. If you've got a view on them, you can get it into us 0879 180 180. That's the WhatsApp number.
OTB AM's Performance Rankings with Gillette.